Found that years ago.
You hawked a Hattori Hanzo sword.
Yep.
He terrified audiences, defined the modern villain, and became a cult legend without ever chasing stardom. Michael Madsen, the ultimate Hollywood bad guy, is gone, but the story behind his life and death is anything but simple.
That woman deserves her revenge. And we deserve to die.
For decades, Madsen brought a raw, unfiltered intensity to the screen, the kind of presence that didn't just play a character, it haunted you. And now, as tributes pour in for the man who left behind 346 acting credits, one chilling truth emerges. Michael Madsen was the last of a dying breed. Born with the smirk of a rebel and the shoulders of a prizefighter, Madsen never blended in. He wasn't the polished leading man Hollywood usually worships. He was gritty, jagged, and always just a little bit dangerous. Even he admitted it himself, saying in an interview, "Maybe I was just born in the wrong era. Man, I'm a bit of a throwback to the days of black and white movies. That's exactly what made him unforgettable." Madsen's breakout moment didn't come quietly. It came with a razor blade, a kidnapped cop, and a Steelers wheel song that would never sound the same again. In Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, Madsen played Mr. Blonde, the slick psychopathic thief with a sadistic flair. In one of the most disturbing scenes in indie film history, he dances to "Stuck in the Middle with You" while torturing a police officer and calmly slicing off his ear. The scene was so unsettling that even Tarantino considered cutting it. But Madsen's performance was so terrifyingly real, it couldn't be ignored. That moment didn't just make him a star, it branded him. From that point on, Madsen was seen as the ultimate bad guy. But behind the sunglasses and gravelly voice was a complex actor who wanted more. He wasn't just playing villains, he was becoming part of a cinematic movement. Quentin Tarantino didn't just like Madsen, he trusted him. Over the years, Madsen became a staple in the Tarantino universe, showing up in Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 as Bud the disgraced assassin with a worn-out soul and a slow drawl. Madsen's portrayal of Bud wasn't flashy. It was broken quiet, deadly, and it made the character unforgettable. That loyalty from Tarantino continued. In The Hateful Eight, Madsen returned this time as Joe Gage, a mysterious cowboy with secrets to hide and a suspicious calm that hinted at violence. He didn't need to shout, he didn't need to move fast. One look, one word was enough to create tension. In 2019, Madsen even appeared in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a quiet nod from Tarantino to the men who built his cinematic world. But for all his iconic roles with Tarantino, that was only a fraction of Madsen's career. Most fans don't realize that his filmography is absolutely massive. With over 340 acting credits to his name, he was in more movies than Charles Bronson, Don Cheadle, or James Gandolfini. Madsen worked constantly, often flying under the radar, appearing in gritty dramas, crime thrillers, and indie gems. His role in Donnie Brasco, alongside Al Pacino and Johnny Depp, proved he could hold his own among Hollywood royalty. He wasn't just a one-note actor, he was a craftsman, always working, always creating. Yet the spotlight rarely found him the way it found others. Despite his talent and undeniable screen presence, Madsen never became a household name. He was often compared to Gandolfini or Bronson actors who carved out their own rough-edged legacy. But unlike them, Madsen never got that one big role that would define him as a leading man. He was the eternal supporting force, the guy who gave the film its grit while someone else took the glory. But that wasn't the whole story. Behind the camera, Michael Madsen's life was filled with shadows. For all his on-screen bravado, there were quieter struggles behind the scenes. Friends described him as deeply sensitive, a man who carried the weight of every role long after the cameras stopped rolling, though rarely spoken about openly. Rumors circulated for years about his internal battles, from career frustrations to emotional lows. Madsen seemed to wrestle with demons that couldn't be scripted. He hinted at it in interviews, saying that the business had changed and not always for the better. There were moments when his name faded from the spotlight, when the phone calls stopped coming, when the roles dried up, but Madsen never stopped working. He took indie projects, foreign films, voice acting, anything that allowed him to keep creating. Some saw it as desperation, but those who knew him said it was passion. the raw need to perform to stay in the game no matter how it looked from the outside. Financial rumors followed him too. There were quiet reports of bankruptcy filings and unpaid taxes, whispers that Madsen had faced money troubles multiple times over the years. It was the kind of thing many actors hide, but with Madsen, the cracks sometimes showed. Yet even then, he remained defiant, proud, and fiercely loyal to the craft. He never stopped believing that his next great role could still be out there. And then came the news that no one was ready for. On a quiet Thursday morning, Michael Madsen was found unresponsive at his home in Malibu. He was just 67. The cause was cardiac arrest, according to his longtime manager, Ron Smith. There was no foul play, no dramatic end, no final scandal, just silence and a sudden void that couldn't be filled. The man who once brought terrifying intensity to the screen died alone in one of Hollywood's quietest towns. For fans, the news hit like a punch to the chest. Within hours, tributes flooded social media from actors, directors, and fans who had grown up watching him bleed and fight on screen. Quentin Tarantino called him irreplaceable. Others shared behind the scenes stories of a man who was generous, funny, and fiercely loyal. It was a reminder that behind the tough guy image was a person who had given everything to his art. But even in death, Madsen's story feels incomplete. Because Michael Madsen wasn't just an actor, he was an archetype, a walking tribute to the old-school anti-heroes who smoked too much, talked too little, and always looked like they'd been in a fight. Whether he was dancing with a razor or staring down a cowboy standoff, he brought something real, something raw, that's missing from Hollywood today. So what happens now to a legacy like his? He may never have won an Oscar or topped the box office, but Michael Madsen left behind something far more powerful, a body of work that scared, moved, and fascinated audiences, a reputation as one of the last true Hollywood tough guys, and a reminder that you don't need to be the star of the show to steal every scene you're in. Michael Madsen didn't need to be perfect, he just needed to be real, and that's exactly what he was from the first frame to the final cut. Long before the fame, the cult films, and the chilling screen presence, Michael Madsen was just a kid from Chicago trying to find his place in a world that never quite made sense. Raised in a working-class home with his mother a filmmaker and poet and his sister Virginia Madsen, who would go on to become an Oscar-nominated actress. Michael seemed destined for storytelling, but his path was never smooth. His early life was filled with rebellion, rough edges, and the same emotional weight that would later define his best performances. Before acting, he worked as a mechanic, a hospital orderly, even a firefighter. He didn't come from privilege or connections. Everything he built came from grit, instinct, and raw talent. He studied under Steppenwolf Theatre Company legend John Malkovich. But even then, he didn't follow the rules. He was too intense, too unpredictable, too real. And that's exactly what made him magnetic on screen. His personal life, though, was complicated. Madsen was married more than once and fathered 5 sons. He often spoke about how fatherhood grounded him, even as his career pulled him into darker roles. But he also admitted that his family life suffered under the weight of his profession. He wasn't always there, and when he wasn't always present. There were stories of estrangement and reconciliation, of moments where the Hollywood image clashed with the reality of being a dad trying to stay afloat in a brutal industry. One of the most devastating chapters in his life came in 2022, when his son Hudson Madsen, a US Army sergeant, died under tragic circumstances. The loss shattered Michael emotionally. A family representative confirmed that he was completely devastated, struggling to make sense of the tragedy. It was a blow that no father could prepare for, and those close to him say he was never the same afterward. He withdrew from public life, grew quieter, more reflective. His already fragile mental state became even more vulnerable. And yet, even in his pain, Michael Madsen kept creating. He once said that art was the only thing that kept him going, that storytelling was his way of surviving the noise and heartbreak around him. And in many ways, that's exactly what he did until the very end. Through the characters he played, he expressed a rage, a sorrow, and a toughness that mirrored his own life. He wasn't pretending, he was channeling something deeply personal. What makes Michael Madsen's story so haunting is how little recognition he received for just how much he gave.